Okay, so let's move on here. Again, we're looking at another function. So I labeled this as being my start point and that as being my end point because again, we can get that good read of the 2 pi right there for the period. So I draw my box. Now, some of you guys may find the whole box to be a bit tedious, but honestly, I find it to be the most important part of looking at these sinusoidal equations and figuring out what the equations are. And when we get to the word problems, you guys will start to see more of the advantage of the box method. Realistically, once I adopted this method, I found sinusoidals to be far easier to teach. So that's why I really stick with it. If you don't use it, there is nothing wrong with what you're doing. You don't have to use this method. I just find personally it's the easiest for me. So again, A stands for amplitude, and my amplitude is going to be equal to 2. Whoops, sorry, I mixed that up right there. From here, my B value, so my period is equal to 2 pi. So that means my B value is 2 pi over 2 pi, which will equal 1. My C value, as I said, we'll talk about that after, and my D value is going to be equal to -2. So I get y equals 2 sine, and then from here we're going to have the b value, sorry I forgot to put the b value for a second, of 1, and in this case I'm going to switch it up and be crazy and use theta. It doesn't really matter which variable we're using right there. I just feel like switching it up a bit. So now let's just go directly and figure out what my sine is. Looking for the point where it goes from the middle to the top. We get that it's right there. So for my sine, that's going to be at 3 pi by 4. So that'll be minus 3 pi by 4. Or it equals 2 sine theta minus 3 pi by 4 minus 2. Again, if you guys are confused about how I got there, I just broke the graph up into quarters. The next one, we get y equals, and I'm going to go to cos, and then we'll go theta. And we notice that the cos right here actually starts at the top. So it's just going to be 2 cos theta minus 2. For my negative sign starts and then goes down. So my negative sign is going to be y equals -2 sine, and then it'll be theta minus pi by 4 minus 2. And for my negative cos, it starts at the bottom right there. So I get y equals -2 cos theta minus pi minus 2. Now, one thing that you guys may notice is that basically all of these different graphs are a quarter phase shift away from each other. We go from cos to negative sine to negative cos to sine to cos to negative sine to cos to blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Finally, looking at my last function right here, well, this one actually is going to give us a really good reading if I start right there and if I go off my sine interpretation of this. So up until that point right there, and then we draw the line through right there, and we draw the line through right there. Now, when we're looking at this amplitude, I see that this is broken up into quarters. So right here, we're at -1/4, -2/4, -3/4. So that means that my amplitude is going to be equal to 3/4, meaning my A value is 3/4. My b value, the amount of time for one period, or rather my period, is equal to pi. So my b value is 2 pi over pi, which is equal to 2. And finally, my d value, or my middle line, is at -1. So doing it again for the first time. Y equals 3 over 4 sine. My b value is equal to 2, and we'll switch back to x for this one. We notice there's no shift, so it's just 2x minus 1. Y equals 3 over 4 cos, and then 2. Looking for my cos. My cos starts at the top and then moves downwards. So this right here would be at pi by 4, because again we're breaking it into quarters. So I get 2x minus pi by 4, and then minus 1. And again, we notice between sine and cos, we just have that shift of pi by 4 units to the right. Then, moving into my next one, negative sine, -3 pi by 4, sine, and then it'll be 2. And then looking for my negative sign, it just goes right there, so that'll be a pi by 2, x minus pi by 2, minus 1, and again, it's just a pi by quarter or a quarter phase shift over to my negative sign, and then finally my negative cos, and again, we get that just slight phase shift, which will be right there, which will be at 3 pi by 4 minus